you look at it right now in today's context, right now's context, this whole thing about turning the gas back on to Germany, the largest economy in Europe, if they can't produce, that continent crumbles economically. Okay, that's the kind of magnitude we're talking, but still that's very, very small compared to what's coming in September. So I don't know how many people are ready for it because, well, you need to trade bags of clothes to get food at the food bank. Because see, here's another thing. Food banks, they give you free food right now. I'm super happy that anybody who needs it can go. And then we have that avenue to help others so they can help themselves. Because if they don't have to spend the money on food, they could use it for something else. You know, it's a fair trade. Society gives and, people take and do what they want with the time that's afforded to them by, and think about the money. If you didn't have to buy food, how cheap would your life be now? Yeah, if you could cut a significant part of your spending out by you don't have to buy food, man, how much money would you save? But here's the thing with the food banks. Now, just in general, people go in there, but what if you had to trade clothes out of your closet or trade something from around your property? You had to come with something that could be on traded or on sold in that same kind of city setting or domestic setting. So what if you just rock up and you get free food anymore? What if you actually have to take something with you to trade for the food as we move forward into these food shortages in September and then October and November, and it's going to get cold and then December and people don't have their coats. So what happened? Americans, we got how many stuffs in our closet like stacked a million deep, What if you had to actually trade something to get food, even from a food bank? Whether it would be a box or a case of box clothes, I don't know what else could be, bed sheets, pillows, I don't know, hats, anything. What could be traded that could be this is the biggest thing. What could be traded that could be on traded for somebody else in a grid down or an economic distress situation? And I mean, not a few people like it is like strata in society now, but the entire country, because there's finance and fiat currency just got wiped out. So everybody's in the same basket. What would be valuable to trade for food then? And I'm not talking about in a barter, like grid down barter. I'm saying still, social services are running, but you're going to trade something to get that food. That's where they're trending next month. So just a distant FYI, I was trying to wrap that into a story somewhere. Forgot what I was going to say because I saw Ransom joining me. I was super excited. Welcome to the new world, Ransom Godwin, 420 TV Freedomist Films. Thank you for joining and spending your valuable time with me, Ransom.
How's it going?
Oh, it's better than average. Well, better than average.
Yeah, everybody's freaking out about the food disappearing, and it's starting to show up in towns across America. And like I predicted 2 years ago, you'd see the food banks run out of food. And now they're blaming inflation. Last year it was COVID and shortages. But here we are, the long lines. Are people ready for rationing? I know you've been talking about that for a long time, but here we are. You're starting to see it. I'm actually waiting for some kind of an announcement from this administration of a new program to help with hard times, to get people used to rationing.
I'm not digging it. Definitely not into that. And you're super far away from your mic there, I think. But why are they telling us to get ready for harder times? I thought the whole thing was about solving all these problems, getting everybody back, getting the economy back. But you see the de-evolution of what was the plan. The plan was the de-evolution of society to reset it. And how far down this course are we? Nothing's going to be fixed on this trajectory, this timeline we're on right this second, unless we change it and we take our planet back. That is at the core of it. Because the way it's going, all countries in unison are all collapsing at the same time. Now, that is not statistically possible. But at the same time, we have a whole new currency system being unveiled across the planet. The BRICS, with their central bank digital currencies backed by. So this is tumultuous in-between phase where there's the most chaos. But something's going to settle finally, and what happens when the U.S. dollar's not there anymore? Then what? Then this is where we go to the food banks. And then what happens if they don't have food? Ransom, we talked about this. If inflation's hitting now and people are saying, wait, I can barely afford food, I'm going to not give any more to the food banks. I need those extra cans of whatever. How's that going to leave everybody else? At what point does the social system not work anymore because there's not enough food delivered? That's crazy to think about. It's happening right now. We got months, literally just a couple of months. That's it.
So how do I sound now? I got a new mic that goes with Skype. That's what I'm broadcasting off of. Do I sound quiet?
Yeah, I can't really hear you too good. Sound pretty muffled.
Okay,
Far
well,
away. Are you out in the desert looking at petroglyphs trying to call in from your phone?
No, I just trying a new mic. I'll recall you with my phone. Maybe that'll work better.
Oh, okay. Hard to hear what's said though, because I was picturing you being way out in the desert somewhere. Because how remote do you think remote enough is? Like, okay, you're out in sort of a drier area, but even if you ran into the middle of the desert, there'd still be other people there in the because how remote do you think remote enough is? Like, okay, you're out in sort of a drier area, but even if you ran into the middle of the desert, there'd still be other people there and they'd find you and come out and be around you, I think. How remote is remote enough should be the question. Because also the revisions of massive amounts of cars leaving city, but they were all just snarled because everybody was trying to leave at the exact same time. And no, it wasn't because the PSA in New York with the nuclear whatever advisory. It was because people were trying to leave the city because they ran out of food and there was no more food deliveries and trucks coming or whatnot. So they were using their last little bit of petrol to get their butts out of the city. But everybody did it at the exact same time. So everything got snarled and everybody were just like, it was a complete traffic jam and there was no way to get out unless you walked. Yeah, that's crazy. Like these images coming in and old buildings, seats of power crashing. Not in an earthquake sense, but the sense of rulership by divine right has collapsed. The mandate from heaven, even in what we consider our own societies for anything banking, power structure, government, that entire mandate has been removed at that point, and we are just talking months from now. That's how weird it's going to get. Strange it's going to get. I can't like equate how it is with the Chinese when they have the mandate removed. The emperor's removed. Emperor is the one that is supposed to supply food, safety, shelter, and life to the subjects in China during any emperor. Think about any dynasty, the emperors. What's interesting now, I did a fair bit of research on and in China. The Chinese dynasties collapse about every 400 years. And it'll vary. It'll be like maybe 340, 370 years, whatever. But right in that area, 380. But I will make a fact here. No Chinese dynasty has ever lasted longer than 400 years. Now, the Warring States period doesn't count, or Three Kingdoms doesn't count, because, you know, that was a kind of a more divided rulership at that time, different parts of the country of what we know the landmass of China now. But more, you know, come forward past the Huang dynasty into more the last 3,000 years of time. These things haven't survived. They collapse. And when it does, it always has the same things happen. Like the food doesn't grow reliably anymore. There's always some drought or some complete floods that create famines because there were not supply chains as we understand them today globally. And the marauders would always come. The hordes would come. Great Wall of China. Well, it was built over a century to get that thing done. Again, they were waiting for the next one because they followed the cycles in the sky. They understood the Big Dipper called the Beidou Qixing and the way that it moved. Now, here's a fact again. Chinese mystic schools, and it's called the cult of the Big Dipper, the Beidou Qixing, say that consciousness originates from the Big Dipper, a star that is visible in the Big Dipper. So is that a Birkeland current that then comes to another set of stars and then touches our star here on our called the sun, and then because of our solar system, it affects our Earth? Like, who figured that out back in the day, that a Birkeland current, which would be the seed point of consciousness, you need that current flow to have everything else work on the planet with magnetic fields and orbits in the star. It all needs to have a power source somewhere and regulated. But they knew that Birkeland current from that, what we know as the Big Dipper, came through our spiral galaxy on its wrapped current flow and then touches our star. That's how far back we're going to when we're talking about the Beidou Qixing. Like, you don't have that kind of knowledge unless you're like the Mayans. You're going back millions of years. So they always called it the mandate from heaven because they knew that that was the area of heaven that the power for the emperor came from. Now, when that current changes and it steps down, our star called the sun behaves differently in magnetic fields and also solar output, UV output, solar irradiance. Those things are affected, and also the heat of the star that would reach the planet depending on how much cloud covers here. So understanding the mandate from heaven, once that's removed, the emperor could not feed the people, protect the people. And we start to get these repeats. All right. So then you start to understand that this is a cycle, a natural mappable electromagnetic cycle based off of Birkeland currents and at least our regional spiral arm of the galaxy of what is happening here with plasma on an electrical cycle that's mappable. It looks like a heartbeat. Even if you go back to the ice ages, it looks like a heartbeat every 100,000 years. Stretch that out over 25 million years, and you're looking at an EKG off of any monitor that you've ever seen in any hospital. Now shrink it down to the 400-year cycles, and you see the beat, 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 beat. And then also bring it down to the 11.8 years solar cycle of solar maximum, solar minimum. When you look at put it out 500 years, you're going to see a heartbeat. You're looking at an EKG screen again. Only electrical can do that and explain solar maximum, solar minimum, not an internally combusting star. It would be constant or close to constant, but not a regular frequency where it stalls and restarts on every 11.8 years. So however small you want to take this, or however long you want to take it into time, from 400 years to 25 million years, the same principles apply. It's just larger, more heavier, powerful cycles. But the resonance and that beat in it, the heartbeat of it, like an EKG, is so prevalent and so easily discernible. That's why they never show you these kind of charts that go back 500 years, 1,000, 2,000, 15,000 years. They always keep you locked in the last like 120 years. And this changed. So our mandate from heaven has been removed in terms of central banking and elite powers will no longer be able to deliver food to the stores or keep what you consider your fiat currency having value enough to buy anything. So at that point, any right to rulership is null and void. Bye-bye. See you next Tuesday. You're gone. And, you know, history has been shaped by these same cycles. Now it's here in earnest. We're at the point where the elite they're putting their final chess pieces in a line, because if they don't get it now, they're not going to be able to retain control at all. Why do you think all these things have been happening? You can't tell me that since 2019, every country is locked, step marched in unison, raising interest rates, cutting off trades, cutting all, and closing all small businesses, only leaving corporate, mega corporate box stores left open for you to shop at. Because the box stores will tell you what to do. It's a mandate. Oh, it's a store policy. If you don't like it, you can't go in. It's not a law. It's not a national law. It's not a governmental thing. What are you kidding me? It's not even a state law. But the store is going to enforce it. Like mom and pop stores aren't going to enforce it. But who cares? But the Costco and the Sam's and the Walmart, they'll enforce it for whoever's trying to lead the show. So I could term tonight's episode, I'm hoping Ransom's back in. Ransom, I think I'm going to call it the full evaporation of the market in September 2022.
The full evaporation.
Well, it is. Well, it is. Am I manifesting this reality right now? I'm not sure.
I don't think so. I think all of this stuff was in plans for 20 years or more. We're watching everything skyrocket. We're getting so close to the point that people are going to finally realize that they don't have enough money to get anything, and then they're going to hit us with nothing being there to get. And I'm already seeing that through the headlines. I'm kind of lost. I didn't know what you were talking about there. I was having an internet issue, I guess. But I finally got back on here. But that's all there is in the headlines, really, is the same thing as last week. They're regurgitating how broke we are, how close we are to war. One thing I think is about to change is you're about to see a lot of headlines about Iran. I think that's the next stage in the proxy war. And they've been setting it up for so long and they've never done it. I've been wondering kind of why Iran has been waited on for so long by several different administrations, all targeting that. I think they like to use it for a bad guy, but I think they're about to get their chance. They're going to say that they already have nuclear weapons soon. Instead of saying that they're trying to stop them from having them, they're just going to admit that they have some, and then we'll be playing a new game, because it seems like, and I'm sure that you saw that public service announcement for New York from the emergency management agency there in New York, telling people what to do, like a 50s, 60s style duck and cover commercial. Like, really, what are they going to do? Put a blanket on and jump under their desk? It was kind of a joke, because, if they nuked a city, there wouldn't be a place safe in it. You might survive the initial blast by climbing down in some basement somewhere, getting piled on with rubble. What are you going to come out to is something like 9/11, but instead of I don't know if I should say that on the air, but instead of microscopic evidence of explosives, it's going to be radioactive material that they're breathing in. And you know how many of the 9/11 first responders and citizens just died of lung cancer and different various cancers recently. I'm not saying that they were, linked or anything. But think about if, we've talked about this before, what would actually happen if they took out one of the American cities in a small exchange, or maybe something in the Pacific Ocean. It really wouldn't affect the world overall as far as a working world, and we already know that. They've exploded so many of them above ground, in the water, in the atmosphere. We're still here. So that means it's a really powerful tool of fear and destruction that they can use without actually resetting the earth, so to speak. They're just going to reset the one world order there that they've created, and it's so fast. These stages that they're going through, first it was the New World Order, and then they kind of one world order, and now they're peeping liberal world order, where the kind of the left aspect of politics is infiltrating everything. And I'm pretty sure that we're so close to the world announcing that they're going to go with a worldwide communist capitalist system. I just don't see any way around it. When China's pulling so much power now, and if we get down to human rights and they start arguing about that, who has if each individual on the planet, they're saying, has a vote, which way do you think votes would supposedly go if China got to vote based on their population. Kind of like, imagine if there was an electoral vote for the world. You would have, India and China being really the only decision makers there with their representatives. I'm glad it's not that way. However, they are pulling a lot of power, and what I'm seeing is Europe is dissolving. The European Union is failing, just like it was planned to. A lot of people know it was originally a German Socialist Worker Party plan, the euro, and it's collapsing because they're trying to tell the people that they need to starve themselves and also welcome in the world. And some of the places that they're coming from are very incompatible. And what are we seeing just as the basic average American consumer that doesn't get what's going on geopolitically right now is they're just seeing everything skyrocket in prices except for their wages. So we're finally in that, I believe we're in that bubble that Ron Paul and other, economists to talk about for a long time, that the central banking dollar would necessarily bust eventually. And here we are. They're going to do it, first to make it hurt, though, before they totally make it worthless. And they're already ready to jump over to a new digital currency. So I don't think any real players of wealth in the world are going to be hurt at all if we change over to a new system. They'll just absorb it. That's the difference between super rich, middle class, and poor, is that the super rich can just absorb the hits of inflation or monetary failure of any kind. They just absorb it. They have enough, property and assets, sway, and political power to just make it through the other end as some other entity. But poor people and middle class will lose everything, because essentially the middle class and very poor will be no different if they can't get groceries. I mean, what's the difference if you're living in a giant house that you don't own versus someone really poor that doesn't own their house, if neither one of you have food, gasoline, electricity, etc. And it's starting to look like people are going to have to start making decisions about cutting themselves off from the economy and making their own little small economies. I heard you talking about what you could use for money. And really, if we go back to the way the United States was for a really long time, even when our monetary system was just fine, people were trading mechanical work, tools, neighbors would always trade food, for some meat. They'd give you a bunch of vegetables or etc. And I think we're just going to go back into that kind of a little secret agrarian society until the takers come for us too, and they're eventually going to do that. But just on the farming end, what a year, because I've been really trying, and it seemed like this year, the more effort I put into it, the more I'm failing. The last couple of years, I barely tried it, and we got excess food. But this year, I tried to get more serious about it. And, if I was a farmer and my family depended on me growing food this year, we would be up the creek without a paddle. And then that leaves you with the other choice of going to the store. And what's happening at the store is, 11 to 20% pricing hikes, because this inflation and all of this doesn't account for the stores raising the prices on the side also. So they're raising the price, and then the money is becoming, less of a value. So we're about to be banana republic is what it looks like to me, man. I mean, I'm trying not to be a pessimistic or anything. I think I'll be fine. We'll figure it out. But I don't know. There's millions of people that just have their head in the sand and they have no clue what's about to hit them.
Do I get an iced coffee with that banana republic? Is my question.
It depends on where you live, because they're having to close Starbucks up in certain places, because they keep getting robbed and whatnot more often than people are willing to go get an iced coffee.
Oh, I thought it was so safe out there in the world. Now that we had Orange Man gone, it should be safe again. What a travesty. Now, I wanted to talk about some travesty. Ransom, you got to tell me if I can't go on this 9/11. Are you on the tube tonight? Am I going to get you banned by saying some certain things? I'll pull it back, if you will. I hate to get you banned, man.
I am on YouTube, but 9/11 is not one of the things they care about anymore. They got away with that. They've, pretty much made people seem like conspiracy theorists, and, so they don't care. I've noticed that on YouTube, and unless you're really showing real, like, documentary facts, I don't think that they care. It's all sci-fi land now in the eyes of the establishment, even though they know better. But yeah, so I don't think they care about 9/11 anymore.
Yeah, think about that, how that was gotten away with, and still nobody came. So everything that's been done since then, they realized they can get away with it. So you got 20 years plus of the shenanigans, of the things that, I mean, they got away with World War I too. I mean, you go back and look in history on how things were so fictitious and so planned, sinking in Lusitania, yeah, whatever, Gulf of Tonkin, please. But wherever you look across through history, there's so many times it just seems that that is more the normal. Now it is history, so 9/11 is history. There's no getting away with anything. It's just the way it was in the history books. But looking back through history, it's been like that time immemorial, where all these things that people come out with facts, nobody's ever held accountable ever for anything, ever, ever, never. Man, you never, ever, ever hear anybody getting arrested or anything. So 9/11, well, you know, during that time, I do remember, was it Larry Silverstein was having massive hundreds of millions of dollars of lawsuits at the time, which is staggering. You know, you got to go back 20 years when anything over like $1 million was super crazy amount of money. Well, they were suing him because there was asbestos in those buildings in both towers. Lo and behold, with the lawsuits, and they were going to have to do all kind of, you know, again, going up into the $100 million range to repair the buildings at that time was just unthinkable. It would be costing like billions of dollars in renovation at today's costs, just to remove the asbestos that was inside those buildings still. Suddenly they all came down, everything, and all those workers got sick from that. And that's a travesty that, you know, they kept saying that, hey, we know, and they called it some fake syndrome, that you're thinking you're faking it or whatever. No, they're not. Like Gulf War syndrome, all that depleted uranium bashed off over there. And, you know, no, they're having it in their head. There's no such thing as Gulf War syndrome. Not only was it how many, you know, 20 inoculations to go over there for the soldiers, but then when they got there, they got DU rounds blowing off everywhere. There were no chemical weapons. Again, what got away with that thing there, that whole lie was continued with no accountability afterward. Benghazi, same thing. Everywhere you look, it's been like that. So let's talk about the guidestones like we did last week. And you know, I was talking with Rex Bear over on the Leak Project, and we had a good interview, and we were talking about the guidestones. My whole thing was the timestamp on there, and he also had gone into this, was at 3:33. So 333 at the end. And that explosion took place. For me, that was a starting of an era. That was the mark that those things were destroyed, that was the old world in planning. Destroyed the structures, and then a new world began, because that timestamp clearly at the top with the 333 on it, 4:03 and 33 seconds. A little bizarre. And then it was in 2022, so you got the 333s and the 222s next to each other, and it just got weird with the whole mathematics in there. It was 6, 7, and then the 7 minus the 4 is a 3, and you know the 6 and the 7 is 13, and it's just weird with all the numbers adding like that. So anyway, if you're going to talk about New York City, the guidestones are directly connected to New York City. Factoid, it's 666 miles exactly from the Georgia guidestones to New York City. Now, where they're measuring in the city, I don't know. Is it right straight downtown at the Bull's Foot or something in the front of Wall Street? I don't know. But anyway, 666 miles from the Georgia Guidestones to New York City. If we brought in a new era by destroying the Guidestones and all those 10 commandments on the whatever fake Guidestones of how the world is supposed to be, were implemented right now. So there's going to be a massive ramp up in those 10. But since we're coming into, quote unquote, a new era, a new world, a reset world, the financial capital would need to shift. Now, you can take it kicking and screaming where half the world will stay on that side over there and half the world will stay here. Or you could do a nuclear explosion over New York City, the financial capital of the planet, and destroy it in one fell swoop. Not a large one. Ransom has mentioned this a million times, like how many 2,000 plus nuclear explosions over the world here since all of our lives have been alive. All that accumulated still here, and we're still here. But if you were to put a smaller one to get the effect from the news, just big enough, not too big, just like a Goldilocks of nuclear over a airburst on a city, just the Goldilocks of the airburst sizes. Not too big, not too small, enough all the news cameras can capture it. that would evaporate the entire financial system, and no pun intended here. It would evaporate it in a matter of like as fast as that thing went off in light and glow, and the world would be unanimous in we can't ever go or do business in that place again. There is no more financial capital there. We are going to move it right now to a new place with, could be anywhere in the BRICS. Where do you think it'll be? You think it'll be in India, China, Brazil, or Russia? Or will each of those nations have their own central bank digital currency, which you'll then need to get their specific CBDC before they integrate it into a single basket that'll be the new reserve currency? But see, switching systems, the guidestones were a very important thing. That was the mark of the end of the era, that the new era has begun. So I would imagine an all-out onslaught of trying to implement those 10 things. But at the same time, that PSA about New York getting hit with a nuke, it's the only possible way it could be done. The financial capital needs to move, but everybody needs to know it. There can be no stragglers left behind on a new financial system or reset or movement of capitals. Like, remember, it was in London and then it came to New York. Well, it's going to move. It's no longer in London. It ain't going back. It's in New York, but it ain't coming back. So where's it going to, Ransom? I don't know. Where do you think the new financial capital will be? And again, pop off a low grade or small one so all the news can capture it. You got all the everybody will talk about it. It'll be the biggest news story on the planet, and everybody will know that the financial capital moved. Boom, you're done. Simple. Hey, what are we going to replace it with? Oh, by the way, there's already these CBDCs rolling around here from China, Britain,
I think if they did that, they would probably recenter the financial center for at least the American district, probably in Denver, close to Colorado Springs, because of their the hardcore establishment that's in Colorado Springs, which is Space Command, and they have an Air Force base there. But if you look under, the shadows there, you realize that entire city is just ran by military industrial complex companies. So I imagine it would be something like Denver or Nashville where they have something set up. But you can go on and on with these numbers, and they may be real or maybe coincidental. I'm not saying that they are or aren't. But let's take the Robb Elementary shooting there. The guy comes in at the door at 11:33:00, and then on another one it says 11:33:004, which is the same numbers. And so things get weird like that, and I don't know how often I go through the headlines, and it's always someone 33 the victim, 33 the murderer. It may be kind of like pareidolia, but I just doubt it when it comes to something like the Georgia Guidestones because of its significance. And you can kind of compare that to a couple, what was it, 2011, when I lived at Andrews Air Force Base in D.C. They had that earthquake that was caused by fracking, probably, that was centered, a little bit west of Washington, D.C. and Virginia. But that cracked the Washington Monument, which is like, what is it, 6,660 inches tall and 660 inches wide, or 555 feet tall. They use these, hidden geometry numbers all over DC. You can find them. So the idea that the financial system would fall, they kind of foreshadowed that with 9/11, because we had the trade centers there, the two trade centers, the World Trade Centers, plural. And that got knocked down and replaced with something that looks like Cleopatra's Needle, called the One World, the One World Trade Center, which just happens to shine light in the early morning over to the empty squares where the other two buildings were. And it's kind of a weird blood sacrifice that they made the entire world participate in. And there's a lot more esoteric symbology, excuse me if I could talk, with 9/11. Colombia, it's represented in the past as other female goddesses over time, and there's usually three of them. Matter of fact, they planned on that being a three-piece monument with three women, one of them holding a sword and a torch and maybe a book. It's really esoteric stuff. But when you look at it, the new goddess was taking over in the time of Aquarius. See, she's out there in the water. It's the water bearer. But she witnessed the two towers fall on the ninth month, which is, a woman's the amount of time it takes for a woman to have a birth. So they gave birth to the one world order on September 11th, 2001. And you can see how we've gotten here from there when you followed the Patriot Act and the Homeland Security being formed and taking all of the government under that we were being reorganized. But one of the most significant things I've seen in years, besides this other stuff that indicates that we were going into a worldwide change into Marxism, is when the only Confederate general in Washington, D.C. was finally allowed to be taken down at the Masonic Hall. And I'm sure you know who that is, right? He's the guy that dedicated their book to Lucifer, the light bearer. I'm sure you know who that is. When I saw his statue fall, I knew that they were going to allow the Marxist mobs to take over, and that we were going into and for some reason my mind just went blank on who I'm talking about. His name, I get that. Let's see, give me 1 second.
He who shall remain nameless.
Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot his name. It'll come back to me when we're not talking about it. But anyway, he wrote the book for, to kind of expose Masons.
Albert Pike.
Albert Pike, thank you. God, I was scraping the inside of my skull I had the name at the beginning and lost it. But yeah, Albert Pike. There was a reason that a Confederate, was able to sit in D.C. on the north side of the Mason-Dixie line. It's because they accepted him, and the world order of Masons was in charge then. But it seems that the Masons have taken another direction. And all of these little steps don't seem like much to the public, but these are big deals in the esoteric circles. And with the elite, they always have a ceremony behind every event. Just take the Trinity site, for example. They did a whole Crowley sigil there, and I talked about this last night. These are crazy people that thought they were going to blow up the entire world, or at least ignite the atmosphere where everyone would die. But they were okay with that because they thought they were going to open a portal to somewhere else to let something in. And I know we talk a lot about that, but Crowley, if you read into his beliefs and stuff, he's a pretty sick individual, but he does say that he did make contact with some other kind of being through weird meditations and stuff like that. And, his sigils that he learned over time from these esoteric places like Blavatsky, and a lot of them were studying the Vril and the Thule Society. And they still use all this stuff, but it's right in front of our face. So the idea that 3:33 in the morning and the witching hour, they blew up the Georgia Guidestones, that explicitly kind of flaunt the idea of world reduction and population, and the fact that a Marxist agenda would take over a world government, a world court. That's not an accident. So I think you're exactly right. It's not that it just started. That's the sign that they're well into it and it's going along as planned. The culling is happening everywhere. I know we can't talk about why, but it's pretty obvious to most people that all of a sudden around the world, athletes are having heart attacks, middle-aged people are having heart attacks, children are having heart attacks, everybody's having heart attacks. It's so sad. It's so sudden. The sudden adult death syndrome. We had SIDS, and you can get into that, and find out, did kids just randomly die in their cribs? Probably not. That's an avenue of a rabbit hole you can go in, but it's going to lead back to today. And now adults are also having sudden issues with their problems. We've seen actors. This is so big, such a conspiracy, in my opinion, that, other conspiracies, you didn't really get to see it, and they would march along media and movies and Hollywood, down a path that everything's great. Look up to us. But recently you've got to see famous athletes, actors, comedians, news anchors, etc. drop dead right in front of you, and no one's asking why that is or connecting the dots. And now the world government is trying to tell countries to shut down food production at a time when they're also saying, oh, well, this disease that went around made shortages happen, and distribution lines have problems, and now we got wars in different places. So you might have to get used to not eating. This is going to be the most polite culling ever on the planet. And just think about the crazy things that you keep seeing, like We just had a massive sex scandal connected to Epstein with Ghislaine Maxwell, who just got convicted of, delivering products to no one. There's no Johns that they gave it to. So how did she get convicted to trafficking children? To who? She's the only one in history that I think, got convicted of doing a crime where there's no one to deliver the product to. And we keep seeing that. So they're laughing in our faces. I mean, look at the Hunter Biden extravaganza that's going right now. There's a diary out there that says some pretty bad stuff about grandpa. There's a laptop out there that shows felonies and felonies and felonies that, for whatever reason, he lets out into the public. And then now we have the iCloud getting hacked, which just shows us what the elite really think about us. Going around doing all the stuff that they throw peasants in jail for and showing it to the world with no shame. It's a really crazy time. But this opening, I think that they think they're letting demons out. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but with mental illness, drug problems like fentanyl and all these other things, I've always kind of thought of drugs as like a alchemist compound that allows certain entities to inhabit people. Maybe that's not a real scientific thing, but think about how religions talk about it, or even the law. When they arrest someone with drugs, they call it drug possession. And according to the Catholic Church, there's possessing going on all the time, and that they're exercising them constantly. I mean, I've went over at least 20 articles in the past 3 years, one of them in which said that they think that 2/3 of Italians are all possessed with demons. And this is the church. Now, I give it to you that this is a weird group of people. It's like one of those clubs. If you found out hundreds of thousands of the club members were into some really bad stuff, you probably wouldn't join. But for some reason, when it comes to religion, people look the other way. But it makes me wonder, are they actually exorcising demons, or are they exorcising humans so that demons can take their place? Is that a weird idea to send you on? Because I've been thinking a lot about it lately. Going through the headlines, seeing people, what appears to be, in my opinion, them losing their mind for various reasons, and the fact that the governments want to force the civilians to play pretend with them with various things. And I'm not just talking about gender stuff. And the more and more I think about it, the future only really has room for aliens with no gender, or some kind of AI robot with no gender. And I just watched a kids movie with my kids there, and it was basically about the cell phones taking over, creating robots and getting rid of humans. And it was really bizarre in there, the stuff that they were showing. It was like they're just laughing in your face about what's really happening.
Need to phase you out, you inefficient human. The reset would call the inefficient humans. See, so you had talked about this before, whatever's happening on this planet with the spells and the spell casting and these types of rituals and overseership of the human soul and the learning, the knowledge from birth all the way through into the job and then to the grave. It seems that the way it's done now, it's just keeping you on a karmatic wheel for reincarnating right here on the planet again. So you look at all these wars and everything, and then, the elite are looking at it like, well, who cares? They're good for right now, but they're going to incarnate again as a human the next time births come around. So we'll have a continuous rebirthing supply and a karmatic wheel. Who cares if 6 million, 100 million die? Who cares? Because they're all going to reincarnate back again. So we'll get them for the next generation. So you got to wonder how many of these elite demons are out there that are not 80 years old, but 800 or 1,000 years old. You get really wonder at some of these top echelons of people. We know Klaus Schwab, etc., but there's people way up the echelon, way up the staircase from that dude. He's like the gopher for those people. They're tens of thousands of years old. How old do you think those spirits are? Because you look at it in the non-human sense of time. To get humans, it is a battery. So what was that movie with Morpheus in there? Looking at us as batteries. It truly is. That's all they look at you as, is a battery and a source to be used. If you die, it doesn't matter. You'll reincarnate as another human, or keeping the breeding stock and the breeding camp, if you will, of Earth just enough so they breed together to keep the constant slave supply or serf supply moving. And then you keep them in the serfdom realms through education. There'd be a constant supply of new labor, just different ways of management. You got to wonder when we're going to get to the singularity where, humanity consciousness will split away from this. And we won't have to repeat that. A section of humanity will jump away. I was going somewhere with the thought. I'll come back after the break here. David DuByne and Ransom Godwin, 420 TV Freedom is Films over there talking to me tonight. Please watch our live streams. We'll be back in a couple minutes right after this break. Thanks for your time. And check us out on Rumble. Adapt 2030 channel. We're streaming there live tonight too.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mystery? Real natural law? You enjoy interviews with amazing guests? Then join Crypt Rick every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Ricks, I've been thinking. Welcome to the Crypt.
Join me at Revolution Radio, Studio B, at 11 a.m. on Saturday for Free Association, when we take a look at philosophy, spirituality, psychology, social issues, and geopolitics. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Studio B at freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back for the second hour of many Ice Age conversations. I'm David DuByne, right along here with Ransom Godwin, talking about the immediacy of changes happening that are going to affect you and your families and how you're going to protect yourselves moving forward through September is when it's really going to hit. If you think this kind of information is valuable, consider a donation to the station, freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio. Keep Studio A and B online, because this type of thing we're talking about, borderline getting banned from off the YouTube, censorship, non-sharing of links, deletion of posts, not able to comment, other things happening for these very same connection of ideas into a wider point that, you know, it gives us a wider tapestry of society in general and what's happening with this purposeful collapse moving into this where we sit today. So welcome back for the second hour as we continue the conversation. And, you know, before the break, I was trying to say that these elitists seem to have been in power for thousands, plural, of years. Now, we might know something more recently of these same power families from the mid-1800s until now. Some of the Rothschilds or the Rothschilds, as you might know them from, you know, late 1600s. But then what was prior to that? You know, when you go back into some of these families from the Roman eras and the Hittite era, and how about going back into the era of Mesopotamia, these king lists that are coming down, the Sumerian king lists are the same ones with direct bloodline lineage to what is happening right now. So as I was saying, it seems that even though we go through these resets on a normal 100 or 80-year phase or 400 years phase, it seems that some of these quote-unquote beings that are overseeing the planet here and then moving into society and having these families that have the money that are then the dynastic wealth that we talk about. How easy is to push the button to reset a society? Like, really, you know, you see these if you go back to some of the Sumerian tablets and stories or whatnot, they were sitting off Earth watching the cataclysms happening, just super sad, crying that it was happening to humanity. But others were like, nah, they're nothing more than cockroaches. Get rid of them. We'll start again. We can make a whole new batch once this thing's over, this natural cycle's over. We'll just make a new batch. Who cares? Just let them multiply again, whatever. We'll set up the conditions to perceive reality as freedom and make them start working again for stuff, and they'll keep working for us. And that's kind of where I let off that. I mean, I lost my train of thought there, but Ransom, thanks for coming back for the second hour.
Awesome. You know, you're right on the same track as I am.
Can you come a little closer to the mic?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on tonight. I'm using the regular mic. How about now?
Sounds a little faint still.
Well, it's what I usually use. Can you guys hear me? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why that's happening. So I'm using the normal stuff, but
go, man, go. It's good. I just turned up my volume too, so we're good.
Okay, I was gonna say you're kind of on the right track because I have the same thought all the time. Some of these plans that unfold, and some of these secret societies and schools and different things, they have the same agenda over hundreds, some might even say thousands of years, like you were talking about. And it makes you wonder, because if you've ever seen any family, the way that it functions, almost necessarily do children start going against their parents. So it's hard for me to believe that these families just kept it going, over a period of 1,000 years to keep a plan going like that. It just doesn't seem reasonable that human beings would do that. Either A, there's something that they're all so afraid of that they get let in on, whenever they pass the torch to the next generation, that they continue down the same agenda, or it goes back to possession, like we were talking about before. And think about David Icke has talked about this before, the theory that these elites mix between themselves, and we joke about it. It kind of sounds like inbreeding, but if they were, genetically selecting each other on purpose to be a certain kind of psychopath or sociopath to let a certain entity in, it would make sense why these agendas stay over thousands of years, or at least hundreds of years. And then also, if a possession is possible, and I'm not saying that that's what's going on, and that there's any space aliens or anything, but if it was, and that, I'm open to the possibility that it's real or something like it, you would think that if one person was possessed, when their life was over and their usefulness was over, that whatever entity it was would just pass to another person, like maybe their son or their nephew or their grandchild or whatever it is. And then you start looking at these families, and you just see the same thing coming over. Like George Soros, for example. I don't know much about his history prior to World War II, but he has a couple of children, which bizarrely you cannot find any information about when they were born. And it takes me back to recent revelations in science, because I think a lot of people are ignoring the technological point that we're at because they think it's too far-fetched for it ever to get going. I was looking at a video that came from the BBC last night on my show, and it was showing, I didn't really play the video for copyright reasons, but basically the video, in a sense, was saying, well, why do women even need to have children anymore? We're at the technological point that we can just grow humans in bags. We do it all the time with pigs and sheep and cattle. We've proven that we can clone it. We've proven that we can gene edit it. We've proven that, we can do all of these things genetically on the microscopic scale to things where you can't just see someone and know what's changed about them. But there really is no reason for men at this point. And there is a scientific theory that men are disappearing and our chromosomes are disappearing as a state of evolution, and that they've become, less and less prevalent over time. And they can measure that, and that eventually that whole system would disappear, because the woman's version makes perfect copies and is able to adapt and change over time. However, the male's version of the chromosome does not change over time. It makes copies of exactly itself, and over time it gets damaged and dwindles. So when you combine that idea, now they're talking thousands or, a long time in the future, but when they already know that's happening, and you keep getting these ideas pushed in the society about the idea of a nuclear family being old and outdated, and the ideas of men and women together making children is outdated, and just the idea of you being an individual is now, kind of being moved to the side is outdated, you start to realize that they're in the perfect position now to manufacture society. They have the robotics end of it, in the bag now, in my opinion. They have it. The singularities happen. They have some really impressive AI. They still need people in these nooks and crannies to do certain things that robots will never be able to do. Some of those are kind of dark, but if you think about it now, they don't need women to have babies, and they don't need men. They can start growing human beings at any time in any facility in the world. Now, that sounds really far-fetched. However, when you keep in mind that they have already been doing it with animals for decades, perfecting the science, and now you can combine what's going on out there in the real world, and you see what I call, or I've labeled, genetic pollution. And that's basically that animals and humans and plants all over the world are being changed at an unprecedented, exponential, unclear, unknown direction. And, they're messing with the foods, gene editing the foods. Everybody says GMO like it's no big deal, but think about what a big deal that actually is. And the fact that the general population has been eating probably 90% of their products that have genetically modified ingredients since about 1991 when it hit the market. And back then it was just wheat and corn, but now everything's genetically altered or edited or whatever. And now we have technology, and I'm not going to name it because, that's what the algorithm is, what we're fighting. So you have to somewhat talk in a code or nonsensical or like your, low IQ just to get past the sensors. But there was a certain thing, a technology that just happened that alters the fundamental nature of the human being in a way that's never been, and now it's commonplace. But you got to remember that what it's doing is involved with viral components, and we've known for a long time that regular viruses and some of the medications that go along to stop supposed viruses shed after they've been in a human. So even if you didn't intravenously intake this new technology, there's a strong possibility that it's shedding off on you, even though you're resisting. And what that means to me is that they've thought about this so deeply that, they can put out something in the population. And we know from genetics from the past, we've been studying genes a lot, that one little gene from one person could spread over time, and only a couple hundred years the gene will spread, and in a couple thousand it replaces lots of genes. So when you think about genetic drift and some of these other ideas combined with technology of today, you realize that they don't actually really need us right now. It's more than plausible that multinational conglomerates that are run by the elite have enough mind-blowing resources at this point that they could just destroy the entire face of the earth of what we call civilization, and it wouldn't even put a dent in the ecology of the planet on the big scale. It would just be a bunch of rubble that people see, and the people can disappear and they can start up. Matter of fact, any number of sci-fi shows that are new within the last 5 years or so is putting this topic in there. There's one that's called Raised by Wolves, and it's pretty much about, the same old story that they also try to convince you of, is that humans destroyed the planet, or humans are about to destroy the planet, or some variation of humans did it, humans are the bad guy. But that's okay, because now we can just grow embryos from scratch, and they're not life. So if you don't want them to grow, you don't have to. But if you want to, we can grow them in a bag, and it doesn't have to have either gender anymore. And not only that, you can gene alter it, maybe for purposes of traits you don't like questioning authority or critical thinking. You can just take the genes out for that and get rid of it. It's way beyond the movie Gattaca. And I don't know, I'm a sci-fi nerd and I don't watch much TV, but when I do, it's usually sci-fi stuff because I know they hide a lot of stuff in there. And the very first episode of the new Star Trek show, Strange New Worlds, they go to a world that's about to blow themselves up because they're dumb, and they equate that race of people to humans at this time point, and they show you stuff like January 6th, and that we had another civil war, and then we had a eugenics war, and then a nuclear holocaust. So that's the timeline in the new Federation of Planets, which is communist. It's always been, the whole show has always been about a communist group that has their own government that breaks away from regular humans and then starts making a united nation of planets where there's no gender bias, there's no species bias, none of that. It's all perfect, and they use credits. They don't even use money. So is that not exactly what they're trying to give us on the ground, except for it ain't fancy and it doesn't look cool in sci-fi? It's a harsh reality of I'm going to say eradication of the current dominant Homo sapiens species on the planet. We're in that phase. Now, just to throw you off, I know that was a lot to intake, but I just want to show
they're
you.
Birthing people. There's birthing people.
Yeah, I want to show you the extent of some of the propaganda that they're showing. Okay, so on the screen, I've been showing it for a long time.
It's news.
It's from AccuWeather. And it's a story about how the lights went out because of climate change, because of the superheat in Houston. And when you look on the map, the weather map that the guy's pointing at right now, you can clearly see that the temperatures are not much higher than they are every single summer for as long as anyone can remember. 100 degrees, 99, 95, 97, 92. Nothing out of the ordinary for that place in Houston, which is really humid and has, you know, a lot of heat. It's a jungle. Here, I'm going to play this with the sound off. So basically, they're saying that, you know, because of the heat, their electricity went up. But if you pay attention, someone forgot to turn all the switches off at the same time. So they're doing it one at a time, like the lights go out and then something else goes out. It doesn't even look real to me. If the power went out, how is the back screen on? How are they still broadcasting, et cetera? You know, but people won't even ask that question. They just, it's so hot, the power went out. Even though they never skipped a beat in the broadcast, they just flipped some lights off and went back to it. I mean, they know that a portion of the population is that dumb, and they know that the portion of the population that doesn't buy it and isn't that dumb is being put off in their own little category of conspiracy theorist weirdos that don't accept climate science and, you know, all of these other Marxist ideas, basically, that they're pushing in every arena of academia, of politics, and of your local government. And I want to know, see, we keep talking about the food getting turned off, but what happens if the money does pop? Like the dollar does pop and ain't worth nothing. What happens to all the people that live in municipalities and get their utilities from the city, like electricity or water or gas or something like that? Are they just going to tell you, well, too bad, so sad, just, you know what, climb in the basement of your building, don't go outside, like they did in that nuclear, public service announcement that they did. I mean, think about, they really thought that people were going to take that serious. That was exactly like the old little cartoon where, you know, Timmy and whoever jump under the table with a blanket to protect themselves from the nuclear blast.
I was only at the very periphery where you might get a bunch of glass shards in you. Shockwave termination point. There might be 2% that'll survive, but just tell the populace. Yeah, this fictitious, what I also saw, now take a back step here, reading into airports now, Heathrow Airport, they don't have enough workers, and everything's always backed up. You see these piles of luggage like stacked to the Himalaya and back, and there's not enough people. So the UK is now going to limit 100,000 people per day to come through the airport. So right away, I was like, you know, they've already talked about this a million times, like you're going to be limited. So we're already coming down this way. But that's not the exciting part. Anybody can find that on the news. What they were talking about was massive heat advisory for the UK. Oh, it's going to get so hot. 89 degrees was a massive, like, stay indoor heat advisory. Okay, I'll play. But then, in addition to the absurd heat advisory for what we get every single day here in Tennessee, 94, 93, 90, 95, 97, 90, whatever, those kind of temperatures, they're always normal. UK, because it was going to be almost 90, they put that massive heat advisory out like today. But the tarmac was starting to melt, supposedly, at 89 degrees, that the tar had turned into sort of a liquid. You know, usually it'll do that at 120 degrees or something. If your roads aren't set for that, like out in Texas and Arizona, obviously they're not going to use the same tar that they would use in Tennessee for blacktop covering because the heat's so different. You know, we don't get to 120 ever here. Never. I can't even remember if it ever went that. If like a super hot, incredible, crazy day is like 105 or something. But tar doesn't really melt then. And then how is it that the tarmacs, and they had it because it was a safety concern, they had to bring all the planes back, and like this plane staging area was there was tar coming off the tires and people walking, and they had tar on their shoes, and it sounded like one of the tar pits in California the way they described it. So I'm wondering what's going on either with extreme UV radiation that's melting that, even though the temperature is the same, UV could be different. Or is it a fictitious story where they're just saying tar melted and it was like in a new place where they just blacktopped and it was a service area. So when they were spinning the plane tires, there might have been some new melt because it was brand new asphalt. And then they blamed it on that. But to put a massive heat advisory out for 89, 90 degrees in the UK, I mean, that makes no sense. Like the super ultimate, it's going to cook in a furnace. Don't even step outside. You get microwaved in 3 seconds, cooked to the bone, and you'll never survive. Oh, plus it'll increase your chances for heart attack. Wink, wink there, Ransom. That's the catchphrase, isn't it, these days? Increase your chances for heart attack. Don't garden. Too much soil touching will be possible. You know, they've known now that touching the soil too much with your hands for you home gardeners, it could increase your risk of heart attack. Like, what is it? Everything you can possibly do today. Looking at the stars too long with your head up tilted, looking at the stars could be an increased chance for a heart attack. So I don't know. I'm going to leave it there. I kind of was going with that, but I know you could pick up on it.
Well, that's really sad because, you know, I've been coming across the same thing. If you shovel snow, you might have a heart attack. I mean, everything's about heart attacks now. I bet that if you could.
But the heat too. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the heat too. I mean, you were talking about, that's what I was trying to follow on. Like both are like, they're so ridiculously intertwined now.
Yeah. Well, they keep, I bet if you could do a chart that showed how many stories about heart attack on average there are every year, you would find this giant spike in 2020, 2021, 2022, especially in 2021 and 2022. Because everything, and everywhere you look, they're telling you that, you know, you can't take long showers, falling asleep with the TV on, you know, loving too much, breaking up. You know, everything is going to cause you a heart attack now because it's sad, David. We live in sad times. It's sudden.
Yeah, I did not know. You caught.
And it's dead.
You caught me off guard by falling asleep watching TV. I didn't know that was an increased risk. Thanks for warning me. You just saved my life. Thank you.
Oh, not only that, the blue light that comes off of your screens can increase risk. I mean, it's all nonsense. And you know what would be funny is if you just started going to see who did what study and where. And I bet if you looked at all these new studies that say everything causes heart attacks, you would start finding out that they all come from the same place. And it's, you know, it's beyond funny now because if you're awake, you're awake. And for some reason, people that are asleep are just asleep. I mean, like I keep looking at these men on the streets and just how people react in scenarios. You know, like, I don't know. I saw probably 20 videos of families almost killing themselves with fireworks. It's like Idiocracy was a milquetoast version of what we're doing right now. I mean, the stuff that we're arguing about, we have people testifying in the government right now. And, you know, a lot of millions of dollars are trying to figure out what a woman is right now. I mean, like I don't really care because I know a guy made a nice documentary and he's doing good off of that. But if you watch some of the C-SPAN right now, it's like half of it's full of people asking other people what a woman is and those people not answering because they don't want to answer, even though we all know what that means and what it doesn't mean. And we live in a time, it's like, I'm sure you had one of these kids that you were friends with growing up in school or somewhere, and you go to their house and, you know, they would be doing whatever, and they'd say, hey, today we're pretending this. And maybe you didn't like that. And you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to go play baseball or football or go exploring or whatever I'm going to do. They have turned that scenario into something that you can go to jail for, that you can be doxxed and mobs can show up at your house if you're the wrong person and you didn't want to pretend with them. I mean, think about the level that we're on. It's well beyond like the Ministry of Truth or any of that stuff where they're or trying to tell someone that 4 plus, because they did do that. That's what's so funny. 2 + 2 = 5. No, or 2 + 2 = 4. Well, it still equals 5 if you did the math right, because math is racist and facts are not facts and reality is now make-believe. So if you think about it on a side of manifestation.
Wait, can I tell you something? Can I tell you something, Ransom?
Yeah.
I'm so
Absolutely.
smart today. I learned how to spell racist. RASSIS, racist.
Right. Yeah. It's just crazy though. Like the reality's so off that I don't know what to think, because mind over matter. That's where I was going with this. Or manifestation. If you think about it at this point, they have so much of the population believing in nonsensical or make believe things. That how can good things manifest if so many people are manifesting random, negative, fake, and impossible things that aren't even part of reality? It's like a massive, let's say, weapons of mass destruction, and kind of bring me back to what you were talking about, 9/11. We went over to the Middle East on the idea that, the government tells the truth and the media tells the truth. And we forgot about the babies in incubators that weren't real. So then we started believing in make believe about weapons of mass destruction. But here's the kicker. They did have weapons of mass destruction. We just didn't talk about those. We sold Saddam Hussein mustard gas, smallpox, anthrax, and some other things. But you notice on the news headlines at that time, they only talked about yellow cake uranium and never any of those other weapons of mass destruction that actually were there because the U.S. sold it to them. So we just make believe some more. And then 9/11 happens. We make believe some more. And we're to where we are right now, where they make you believe that if you put on a piece of cloth while you're, walking, you're safe. But if you're eating, it's fine. You can eat peanuts. You can take a drink. And viruses no longer work that way. Viruses take a break and they need a lunchtime too, just like you. So they're going to take a break. And what do you think? How long do we have until the next lockdown? Because obviously they're already doing it in China again. And they're talking about this new, super variant that's going to make everything shut down. Ironically, probably right before the midterm elections in the United States. So do you think people will buy the fairy tale a second time and think that everything's just locked down coincidentally while we're having food shortages and it's an election time and, all of this other stuff's going on? And then you have to get to the elephant in the room that we're creating. I don't know how many countries with active proxy wars to head into this reset. And I know nobody wants to talk about that, but it's becoming more and more obvious to anybody that's looking at the military movements of the world that they're all staging for a new drawing of the maps. That's the only way I'll say it, because
they're going to cover.
So is the war just to be there so that it's in the mental memory of the people? And maybe we won't go to World War. Maybe they'll pull out something else that we haven't. But they only have a couple cards. I mean, you were talking about coincidence before. How coincidental is it for a guy to make a play game of cards that all come true, like the Illuminati cards? Is that just one of those things we're supposed to ignore and joke about it and laugh about it? However, it's so accurate that it's mind-boggling. How did that person know? Is he a prophet? I mean, people should be hunting whoever made that game up, and those cards are like a new Nostradamus. How did you know? Or the people that make Family Guy, how did they know all of these things were going to happen? Or The Simpsons, and you can go on and on with this predictive programming. And it's to the point, like, it's a great disguise. It's a great defense mechanism for the real conspiracies that are going on, because anytime you point out anything real, I could bring you like 50 articles about sci-fi things that sound like they're in a movie, but they're real. And someone will just say, I saw that movie. Oh, yeah, I saw that show. I mean, it's perfect deniability that they control the reality. It's like that old Outer Limits. We control the vertical and the horizontal and the sounds and the sights. They do. But people like us are, dangerous, I guess, because you can see through that and not pay attention to it.
Yeah, I could say the world's staging for a global war, but imagine if aliens showed up, and because everybody was already staged for a world war, and we could fight the aliens directly, and then we could win, and then we could have a global government because we were all going to beat each other up, but then we all decided to beat up the aliens, so we all love each other. Humanity even resets into a new, no countries, no boundaries. Hey, wasn't that one of the things on the Guidestones? I do believe that is. There shall be no boundaries, one world. So, again, if you're talking about orders of magnitude to change consciousness and perception that a new world has emerged, that the old one is never coming back. All right, we're pretty sure that 2019 is not coming back. The Rona threw that into the, it's out to the past. Now we're coming in. I don't think 2.0 is going to work if they go back at it again. Oh, there's this other thing. There's an enormous amount of people who woke up, a huge amount. I'm serious. Like people I never thought would even be talking like that, talk to me like that, and I just am falling on the floor. Like, what? You're debating with that now? You don't believe that now? What? You saw this statistic? Really? Okay. I'm glad that you would then have that conversation. That's cool. So I don't think it's going to work for 2.0, but they're going to need a cover story like pulling the building. They're going to need a cover story. What's coming down with this whole food pricing thing and food non-availability, the cascading economy, the full evaporation of the markets and a reset, they're going to need an excuse and like a cover for that. You need a diversion of sorts. Every, hero action movie you ever seen, they make a diversion over there. So everybody runs and then whatever, sneak through. So they need a massive diversion. But here's the thing. This is the last thing in the Illuminati card deck that I haven't seen yet, the alien invasion. Everything else is live except like a few cards. Because me and Rex, and there's been a bit out there to know Rex Bear, this is has to have been 6 months ago. He and I were looking through the last of the cards that had not been played, and we were trying to put meaning to them. Out of the entire set, almost everyone has been played. I didn't really know that because at first we're like, yeah, let's go through and find the ones that that don't make sense now, that could be future events, but we just kept putting them down and down and down and down and down. They were all there. They're all what you consider modern waking day life or had been seen in the last, several years. It was like never. Okay, they're all here. Everything's played. The only one I really remember that wasn't played was the aliens. Alien invasion. So think about that cover story for a cover story. Like everything that Ransom and I tonight are talking about, collapse of this, food shortage, okay, that will happen. Armies are staged across the planet. And then, bam, suddenly aliens are here. Now imagine the reset of the entire global system at that point. Like aliens could destroy all different kinds of cities. You see what I mean? Like the aliens could do an enormous amount of damage, and then we could knock them out, something like that pre-predictive movie, Day After Tomorrow, and then we'll have a new society built, and there'll be wreckage of the ships laying there. But you brought up a great important point. If you destroyed cities, how long would it take? I saw a couple great National Geographic synopsis or like role plays or what would happen after several hundred years of a city being destroyed in that fashion. 300 years, you don't know it's there. There's some big pillars and girders like what would be underneath of a raised highway. Some of those concrete, structures are still laying in the rubble, but almost everything else has been completely crushed and turned into rubble by the trees, even in the middle of the cities and things. Glass, aluminum, all that stuff's gone for sure. 400 years, you really wouldn't even know that our society existed. So even taking cities to rubble, and if you're talking, like we were of like the Sumerian king list or some of these characters that were in the Bible, Methuselah, that lived to be 1,000 years old, if you destroyed an entire civilization, it would only take 400 years before it would be completely back to pristine nature again, where you wouldn't even know anything was there. But that would probably occur at the 300-year mark. So you'd still have 700 years. You could do 3 of those resets in a lifetime. And even if it got really nasty like it is now, you reset it, and it takes 300 years for the earth to regenerate itself. So I'm calling that. You woke a couple thoughts up in me. World's going to stage for war, and there's going to be an alien invasion, and it'll bring in all those global governance things. Everything will be on a global governance strategy. It'll have to be. Any movements of armies, it'll be a global army. Any movements of money or materials or anything, it'll be a global movement of shipping and a global unification of supply chains under one unified body for the globe to move resources around to fight the aliens, dude. Because one government can't do it alone. Oh, and your weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, those were the bars of gold.
The gold. That's what they always said the aliens wanted, but I don't think it is. I think it was just the planet, if there ever was. But think about the good thing that will come from that idea. So if they got all the militaries together, ready, staged for war, and then all of a sudden they're telling us there's something from outer space that's a threat, and we'll all be set up perfectly for that. I mean, there will be no hate speech. You're not allowed to talk about gender. So whatever kind of alien it is, we'll already have it set up where you're not allowed to speak or say things, to offend it. But we'll get to find out if it's real or not, because I think one thing will happen if it's not real. That'll be we'll defeat the aliens, and then we'll have our world government. And, yay for humanity. We ran them off. We scared them. But think about another scenario. If the aliens were actually real and there was an alien presence interacting with governments on Earth, they may not accept interaction with us until we only had one government to speak for the entire planet. And that would kind of show you that, they would tell everyone that, we have to be a unified planet, and it'll be a whole new phase of humanity where we get to deal with, and learn new things with these aliens. But it's on some, things that we have to do. We got to get rid of our weapons. We got to get rid of this. We can't use our fossil fuels. You could just see that it's set up perfect for that scenario. I mean, a lot of people thought that all of these weird things for a long time didn't make any sense. But if you put them together, they really do sound alien. Just the whole weird thing that's been happening with what I was talking about earlier, genetic pollution. These are ideas that would fit perfect into, let's say, a corporate takeover by another governing body. And how do you do that? Well, you would, shoot down the stock value of that company you wanted to take. And then when it was worth nothing and at the bottom, you'd buy it up and get all the resources. That almost sounds like what's going on with Earth as a whole, and all of the other steps that they've taken. What do you do to a population that you're going to invade? Well, you might want to call them insurgents for one, and then you might want to cut off their food supply, their finances. You might want to cut that off. Their energy production, you might want to cut that off. You might want to make everybody a little malnourished through their food and their stuff that they get. And then what happens at the end? We all know what happens at the end, because we have domestic cattle. And we know what we do with those at the end of their lifespan, that we feed them, we fatten them up or whatever. But this seems to be a different scenario, like a war scenario, in which you would, basically make the population weak, broke, and demoralized. And then you've basically offered them something new, a new way to go, bait and switch, always have a reaction for their solution. Is I think that's what we need to do, is have a reaction for their solution. They always have a solution, for the problem that they made, and they make us react to the problem, and then they have the solution. But what if we just react to the solution at the end, because we know what it is, and that's getting rid of any individual human rights that anyone has on the planet. And once you get rid of the borders, there's no, firewall, so to speak, to stop tyranny in its full capacity. They make all of these sci-fi movies about what would have happened if the Nazis took over. And there's several of them over the past couple decades that you could watch. And in every single one of those movies, besides the uniforms, we're living in that time. I mean, all of the stuff happens. They control the speech, the money, the food, everything. It's hard to say with a straight face or deny the fact that we're living in those times. So if you're not blaming it on aliens, what would they blame it on? I mean, or would they even care? Would they just go ahead and just let the population decrease? And we could blame it on any number of things. They could call it climate change. They could say it was the war. But aliens does seem to be a play that no one's ever seen before on the planet. It seems like the only thing left, because they've already given us massive death, famine, starvation, viruses, etc., nuclear war. They've done it. They've scared us with it. There's really nothing new for them to pull on us besides this idea, and you keep seeing it. So I've been showing everybody this article while we were talking, and I don't know what you were exactly talking about when I joined, but I thought I heard you say something about the universe and its heartbeat. And ironically, this article is talking about a new mysterious radio burst in space that has a heartbeat pattern. They keep nudging this idea that they're just right around the corner. We're about to talk to aliens. or at least contact them. And China has decided that this is a feasible idea, and they're putting a lot of resources into it. So that might tell you where the next stage in our fairy tale is going.
Well, I mean, Japan and China have been riddled since prehistory and with stories of contact with star beings. Nomo. Got to check out some of the Japanese folklore. If you look at Nomo, they have Aboriginals. It doesn't really matter where you go. I mean, star visitation has been part of our civilization for, at least these last 17,000 years. So what is it that allows them to visit or be visited? Was it hallucinogens that allowed them to see these creatures or visitors or visit their dimensions, but it was always a certain psychoactive substance? Because it would be different in Africa than it might be in South America, and it might be different with the peyote up in the deserts. So each one has their own different specific dimensionality or dimensional beings to contact to. So they would all be slightly different because they're in different dimensions. But the psychoactive substances would allow you to visit that. It would always be that same dimension when you plug in, like psilocybin. Boom, you always go to the same place. So what is it with all of the ancient cultures of the planet? All had visitation or connection or just daily life with these beings. And they always come back down to try to teach again. So I don't know. It's a complex subject. Either we've been run this course and we're on the same rodeo again and the exact same outcome and the same beings will come back, but it's all I don't know. Something seems to be on a cycle here, and we are definitely into the throes of the beginning of it and getting much more deeply into the beginning of this change that we're seeing. It was frightening and shocking with the virus. The famine, that's so old school. That's so last millennia. Come on, dude. Can't you put up a different horse? You're going to probably change, paint the horses the same color. You got the white horse, the black horse, the red horse, and the horse of the famine. That's so old. That's so last millennia. Come on, dude. Can't you give me 4 different colors of the horses? Oh, you want to get a rainbow unicorn. Okay, that's a good one. The new 4 horses of the apocalypse, next round around will be like a rainbow unicorn, a zebra, and what else? You know what I mean? I'm curious how they're going to try to push it to this point. Because if you obviously can see, and everybody can, we're in the cycle now. We're in the beginning of it. So it's going to intensify every day from this point forward. It's going to get more and more wound tighter and more intense. So things are going to actually move much faster from this point. Really much, much, much faster, exponential time. Right as I was opening up, Ransom, before you joined, I was saying that, the amount of change in a single week now seems like what it would have been a month, even in the COVID time when it was all new, all fresh. Just so much to absorb, so much information, trying to compare it was a tidal wave of flow. Everything in a month was just years from before. But now it seems like that same month in 2019 and 20 of just overload of info is now squeezed a year into a week or 6 months into a week. It's crazy how much it seems like time's speeding up in compression. So how much faster can it get? Because if we continue at this rate, we're going to have a year's worth of change happen in a day. Not too distant in the future. With it by 2024 or something, they're going to be a year of change in a day. So, it's getting spound or wound tight right now and sped up. People's minds aren't handling it. There's freaks everywhere. That song Super Freak? Well, yeah, there's freaks everywhere. I mean, as far as the eye can see, there's freaks. So the population is going to be a danger to itself because the freaks are out and the magnetic field's changing. And then I don't know. But going back to the gold, think about those countries that the U.S. had invaded to keep the dollar strong. From Syria, I can't say the full word. That's a bad one. Syria. How about Iraq? How about Gaddafi in Libya? anytime countries want to move over to a gold-backed currency or something, that's what I'm saying. The WNDs, they weren't actual chemical weapons. It was bars of gold that was going to usurp and put the first little tiny knife cut into the US dollar homogeny across the planet as the only transaction medium for gold, silver, commodities, or any other umpteen products. That time's gone. So think about the karma coming back, and they keep I wanted to allude to something here before we get off the program tonight a little bit, but yeah, why has Iran been put on the back burner for so long? It'd been used as one of those things since I was a kid, even back in the 70s of the hostage crisis. It's been used since that time as like the next greatest, scariest thing. It's been on the scary list of things for like however long I've been alive. It's been in my scary rearview mirror. Iran's just behind you the whole time. It's always in the news. It's going to blow off. It's going to be this. Like how many times have we heard we're like getting closer to war with Iran for my whole life? It's been like that the entire life. So all they're doing is bringing and indoctrinating new people in with the same message again and again. It's getting a little old. But it seems like it's the only country left on that list of 7 that had tried to move, and Bush had talked about with the new American century that those 7 countries, including Afghanistan, all needed to get re-democratized. So Iran's the only one left. And now they're joining the new BRICS currency. So boogeyman, it's almost like a boogeyman with a nuclear weapon with a bar of gold that's a weapon of mass destruction, and a new financial system. Hey, that's right outside my window. Get away from my window with that bar of gold. Hey, don't throw that bar of gold through my window. Stay away from my windows with your bars of gold. You know, that's kind of the absurdity of the whole thing. So what do you think our new money is going to be reset into? So I wanted to talk about rounds of ammo for a second. I had talked to somebody and they're like, yeah, pretty much $1 a round for something that you're going to trade. But I'm like, is that $1 of now money, or is it $1 of hyperinflated new money, or how's that dollar equivalent work for a single round, whatever brass casing that might be? So anyway, I don't know what would be tradable, Ransom. What do you think?
Well, obviously, ammo and spent casings will always be a source of revenue because they'll always be used, even if you were melting down the metal for something later. But the ammo prices are, are kind of a joke because they've been going up, but not so much compared to everything else. So like, they know that people have bought so much ammunition out there that anybody's buying it now is kind of late to the game. And you have to keep in mind, speaking of ammo, that a lot of the branches, not branches, that's the wrong word for it. The government agencies like the Department of Interior and the Department of Education and et cetera. If you remember during Obama, they were stockpiling on guns and ammunition, and they were sending the prices up and making shortages. Now, a lot of people were claiming in a conspiracy way, in my opinion, that they were just doing that, to make the availability bad. But I don't think so. I think they were buying it up because they planned on using it. And to circle back what you were talking about, the depleted uranium that we filled Iraq and Afghanistan with, that was supposed to only be used in the case of a nuclear war. It was supposed to be part of our stockpile. At that point, after the bombs went off, it wouldn't matter that they were shooting these depleted uranium things because they were already going to be sick. But instead, they, for some reason, pulled that out early.
I did not know that. Oh, really?
Yeah, it makes you wonder. It's like they knew that if they used that up, it wouldn't be there later. But back on the end of the ammo buying, they bought enough for more than a 7-year war of 223, 5.56, and 40 cal and things like that. And they have unlimited amount. Now, why did they buy that? I mean, well, it makes you want to find out. And then there's this thing called InfraGard we talked about before. That's something that was under the umbrella of the Homeland Security, which is basically a bunch of civilians in places that like the power companies, the dams, et cetera, that think that they're some kind of part of the continuity of government. So they already have plans for things to collapse, and they have since back in 2001, because most of it was planned out with that project for a new American century. And it does make you wonder why the governments of the world since World War II have left Iran out of things. Because as you know, the Reich in Germany, they didn't mess with Iran. And some people know why that is because the name of Iran, it means Aryan. That's the ancient Aryan Indus Valley right there. And I believe they were looking for stuff there, and there probably still is things there, but now we're finally technologically able to find out where it is under the sand and dirt and everything. Just like we found all of these other mythological cities, and they're still finding pyramids, from Google Earth that are buried all through the Sahara. There's a whole world being uncovered, and I think a lot of it's in Iran. That might be why, we've cut them off to the world and made it so hard to get to. You think about all the places with the ancient stuff. It's really hard to get to places. Like even in Turkey now, it's unstable. So it's hard for people to go to these sites of ancient world and do any kind of investigative thing or find new things because they're now disappearing. As you know, ISIS went around Iraq and Afghanistan and started blowing up the oldest of human history that was still around, a lot of the Sumerian stuff. But not only that, giant Buddhas in the side of the mountain. They caved in, some of these cave cities that go in that the Hindu made thousands of years ago. And they've been slowly, systematically destroying evidence of the old world. And it looks like it was all in preparation for this reset so that they can come out and tell you whatever they want you to believe, and you're going to believe it because the general populace is so uneducated. So there will only be certain people that know stuff, and they're already viewed as crazy by the general populace. But guess what? We're going to be the ones that are, hiding out there with the food and the knowledge and the books. Books are the money, my friend, because when they turn the internet off, each book becomes invaluable. Books on electricity, books on carpentry, books on farming. That's where the future of money's at if we collapse.
Yeah, I'll agree with you because I was looking at some Goal Zero 1.2 kilowatt, just a simple battery backup with a solar panel, just to be able to charge things like the phone, the ham radio, the CB radios, all that kind of stuff. The rechargeable lights, so you have light in the evening, all that kind of easy rechargeable stuff. Obviously, you're going to want to have communication, so anything on the CB, the handheld CB, all the handheld units, that sort of thing. But I was looking for the 3 kilowatt, and those are nigh impossible to find right now. I mean, you're not talking about running anything on your home on that. It's not about, plugging in the washer, dryer, and the microwave at the same time on that thing. It's about just having some basic communications available to you at all times. And, it doesn't take that much to power up an iPad or to recharge something where you could get news, weather, and information. So there's some essentials, and if you did get cut off for quite some time, I mean, even if you had that basic amount of electricity to see, I'd already been setting up and thinking like everything I have is rechargeable, everything. So if I can plug in a generator for a minute, I know the fuel would run out after a while. So if you got to go to solar, or if you can go to Schauberger's Vortex Power, you get power every time it rains, but you can, push out, I don't know, 57 kilowatts or something like that. I mean, Germans had a good design for a rainfall kind of flow. So if you had a battery bank, then you could refill it every time it rained. And at the same time that the rains would pour, your batteries would get refilled. So then you would get that much time. Now, if you had a week worth of rain, you'd have a week's worth of constant electricity based on just spinning some water. Yes, there are going to be people who have thought a few of these things through and are going to fare a little bit better than others. But at the end of it, it only takes one slip on that creek to break your leg and you don't have medical care. I don't care how much free electricity you have. That's where, like pioneering medicine comes back in. So if you have a book on how to set a fracture, you can see why they bit the belt and drank whiskey before it. Like, pull it. I mean, I don't know how good that would really heal up, but I don't know. We've been here for 10,000 years, at least in this since the Younger Dryas, gone through a cometary impact or on an ice sheet. glacial cooling, heating, massive cataclysms, eruption after eruption, and we're still here. Famines, plagues, cometary bombardment, volcanic decades without a summer, and we're still here. So a reset of the monetary system might be a very small thing in comparison, but it gives me hope that after all those cataclysms of what we would consider like really just civilization ending, that we are still here. So something as small as a reset on the currency compared to a comet impact on an ice sheet that wipes out 90% of the animals on the planet. You know, when you look at that in kind of a balanced comparison, you're like, all right, I can reset the dollar, not a problem. But a lot of people don't have the skills. So then, you know, we come back into this. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting world. And every week we march forward, it's going to be like that much closer to it. So my whole call is 16th of September, that week prior to it. That's all the time you really have left to get ready and take that deep breath, because that is the end of time as we know it, the end of the financial system as we know it, and the reset begins in earnest of everything we've ever known gets flipped and reset beginning September 16th, that week up prior to it, which is going to be, like you said, Aquarian energy, September 9th, September 11th. A lot of things happen in September, so look for the alien invasion. Thanks for listening tonight. Ransom, I do thank you for joining me. If you want to check out his work, Ransom Godwin 422 Street. This film, David DuByne signing off. See you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Revolution